Welcome to another episode of Author Spotlight with Judy Baker. I'm the book marketing mentor. And today I have Marcia Moran with us, and she's going to be talking about her book. And so, Marcia, welcome. Tell us about you and your book.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me. This is marvelous. So, I am a stroke survivor. I had my stroke on March 30th, 2014, and I was laid out completely. I never thought in 8 years I would be up and functional like I am now. So, I think that anytime you have a goal and a mission, you work towards it, and even if you're a stroke survivor, you can often get there.
Wow. Where were you when this occurred? When you
I
had,
was at home.
were you by yourself?
No, so it was Sunday morning, and my husband was downstairs. And I woke up and I felt funny. So I went, I think I'm just going to go back to sleep. So I texted my friend, Rochelle, to tell her she wouldn't see me for breakfast, right?
Uh-huh.
I rolled over and I got the worst headache imaginable right there. And despite that pain, I fell asleep. The next time I woke up, my right side was paralyzed, and I knew I was in real trouble.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I'm we don't want to have any spoiler alerts in here. But what happened next?
I threw myself off the bed, dragged myself across the carpet with using my left hand, and finally opened the door because I was a little bit too short. So for some reason, I finally stretched just far enough for the doorknob. I crawled down the hall and ran totally out of gas. So yeah, my husband found me.
Was writing the book part of your recovery process?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. So I had aphasia, which is a language disorder.
I had it from chemo, so I yeah. People who've never had it have no idea how weird it is.
Yeah. So you can't speak. I couldn't write and I could read, but because of the stroke, my short-term memory was gone. So I read it, went, wow, this is great, closed the book and completely forgot it. So the first time I wrote in my book, I typed 2 paragraphs and it took me all day.
I'm I'm just curious what before you had the stroke, what were you doing? Were you working full time? What were you up to?
Yes. So I had my own business.
Uh-huh.
I was a marketing person
Uh-huh.
and I had a full client list. And I thought every day was just golden for me, you know?
Were you able to go back to that, or have you just switched gears altogether?
So I couldn't go back to that because I couldn't speak to people, right? So I learned to walk again and I was walking fine at 1.5 years, but I couldn't talk. I learned how to talk again after I had neurofeedback. And most people don't know about microcurrent neurofeedback.
I've never heard of that. Tell me more.
So it's a device that's about this big,
Yeah.
right? And there are 5 leads that come out in their EEGs. There's two positive, two negative, and a ground.
Yeah.
And they turn it on. And I thought my doctor was giving me the runaround because I felt nothing. And after about 5 minutes, he said, okay, we're done. I'm going, okay. So the interesting thing is that I could talk better that day.
Oh,
And after 16 sessions, I talk like I do today.
Wow, that's crazy. So what does that do exactly?
Well, it's not actually, they aren't really sure how it works. Energizes your brain,
Yeah.
and I think it allows for neuroplasticity to grow, so
Yeah.
it's more energized. There's also a point where where you have PTSD, so your brain is stuck in a certain pattern,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So it breaks through that, and that's what I had. I had PTSD, and so 16
Oh,
sessions later, my brain was functioning normally again.
I get it. Because you weren't on that continuous loop of reliving the trauma. Now you had
Right?
another reality happening.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you sound like a very resilient person to be that
Hmm.
persistent. And I think we share this in common. I thought after I had cancer, when I finished chemo, I said, "Oh, I'll be right back to, rocking and rolling." Yeah, took me a year and a half to get all that out of my system, all of the chemicals out of my system. And
Wow.
I'd say it was about that was when I could really start feeling kind of like I was totally functional again. But I'll say
Yeah.
it was probably at year 3 that I said, "Oh, now I am physically stronger and better, and things are all working, except for the neuropathy, which I'm stuck with for the rest of my life."
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not what I was expecting at all.
Hmm.
Now, did they take you to? I mean, because you didn't know you were having the stroke initially, so you missed that initial little window. Do you want to tell people a little bit about that? Because I've heard controversial things about, yeah, if you do this in the first hour or so, you can do this. But now I'm also hearing that there's some different thinking about that.
So I did not get TPA, and that's the drug that you're thinking about,
Yeah,
because they had no idea when my stroke happened.
yeah.
It turns out that it was okay that I didn't get TPA because it would have made my brain bleed even more.
Oh, okay.
So I'm okay that I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good solution for most people.
Mm-hmm. But it
Yeah.
isn't it isn't the appropriate thing for everybody, and
No,
I
it's
think that's what I've been reading about.
right. It's not the appropriate thing for everyone.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was glad that I didn't get it, because if I'd gotten it, my brain bleed would have been worse.
I think a lot of people don't understand that there are different types of strokes. It's
Right.
not just one flavor, just like I just told you I had ovarian cancer. There's not just one flavor of ovarian cancer either.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I had what's known as I had peritoneal cancer, which is the whole lining of your uh, abdominal cavity. So there it wasn't. I didn't have like a mass. I had a bunch of little polka dots all over that. And they can't
Oh,
take that out because your body doesn't work if you don't have that filter system.
right.
Whereas most people would say, "Oh, that's oh, it must be the ovaries." No, 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 not necessarily. So, so the type of stroke you have determines a lot of whether or not you can recover or how you recover. Is that correct?
It has some bearing on it, but I'm going to say, just because there's a bearing, don't forget that your attitude is everything.
I'm with you on that 100%.
Ischemic strokes, that's where a little blood clot goes up into your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that accounts for 85 to 87% of strokes. The rest are hemorrhagic, and that's where your brain bleeds out.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was actually an ischemic stroke. I had a carotid artery, I'm going to call it a tear. They call it a dissection. a blood clot formed and it broke through and just. So here's the interesting thing. I had no symptoms for a stroke until the stroke actually happened. So I had no high cholesterol. I had high blood pressure, but it was treated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had no heart issues. I ran regularly. I mean, it was just a fluke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just part of your anatomy said, "Oh, we're not working," and there you go. What would people find? Um, well, so you said that was 2014 was
Yep.
when you had the stroke, and you went through a lot of relearning, including how to talk. What how did you what got you through that?
So when I was laying in the hospital, I set a goal. My 1 year goal was to run a 5K. When I got out and was in the rehab hospital,
Mm-hmm.
I worked on walking. Well, so let's just put it this way. I didn't run the 5K in year one, right? I didn't run it in year two, but I did have an interesting thing happen. So I was out running. It was like just before the 30th, and I fell and I dislocated my elbow. I called my husband. He took me to the hospital and they put me on morphine. And the morphine
Yeah.
worked in such a way I had no aphasia. And I went, woohoo!
Whoa. That's wild.
Unfortunately, when the when the morphine wore off, I had aphasia again. So I knew that there was something out there. I just
Yeah.
had to look for it.
So you became your own advocate
Yep.
to figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. It just sounds like we've got a lot of similarities. I found too, like you, doctors know what they know, but they don't know our bodies.
Right.
And you understood more about what was going on with you inside. And that is just really critical.
Yep.
Um, and it sounds like you have a very supportive husband as well. So that is important support system.
Yep. It's critical. So if I'd had a different kind of spouse, would be a completely different person. So when I was in the hospital, in the rehab hospital, I was taken down to the bare bones and I had to relearn everything. And
Wow.
so if my husband had been very different, I would be someone else than I am now.
Yeah. Oh, when when did you feel that your story would help other people? When did that idea pop in to your head?
When I was in the hospital. So here I was having a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
My husband didn't know anything about strokes. I didn't know anything about strokes. So he had to learn about what to do every day. And you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes it was in our detriment that he didn't know something.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, they fed me chicken in the
Uh-huh.
hospital.
Yeah.
Well, I was on a liquid diet. So the chicken came in the room. I'm going, that smells really good. And I started eating it. Well, then I started choking, but I didn't have a choke sensor. So I wasn't really choking. I was, yeah.
Oh.
So I'm guessing they put their fingers in and fished it out. I don't know for sure. And then they yelled at me and said, you should know that you shouldn't be eating chicken or anything. You should be drinking. It's like, okay, I don't remember anything. Really?
Yeah.
Don't blame me.
This is sounding very familiar. Like, well, no, I haven't been on this bus before, so no, I don't know the rules. Could you help me out here?
It's like, so my husband was there, and had he known that it would be dire if
Yeah.
I ate something,
Yeah.
he would have stopped me, right?
Sure.
But he didn't really know. That was the point where he realized that eating a piece of food would literally kill me,
Yeah.
or could. It's not would, but could.
Yeah.
And that's when he became scared. It's like, oh my God, she could die. I mean, she's survived this long, but she could die anyway.
Yeah. Were how were you able to coordinate being, being it's hard being the patient and having to kind of organize everything. So what was going on there? Was Did he take on that role? Was there a patient advocate there? What happened?
He took it,
He took it on.
the whole thing. And he
Wow.
didn't know that much, again.
Yeah.
But, every day he learned more things. Like, oh, she should not be in the bathroom by herself.
No
Yes.
kidding. Oh, wow.
Um, a nurse left me in the bathroom and came out and made my bed. It's like, okay, that's not the thing to do because obviously I fell over, right? Like,
Oh, well, and you definitely have a sense of humor. So I mean, now you're looking at it, but I know at the time it's like not so funny.
it was not funny.
No.
But I didn't get hurt any worse than I already was. So, I mean, yeah, kind of have to laugh at that, right?
I know, I know, no, I really do appreciate that because it's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I've already been through the worst, so now what's going on?
And
Um,
so she probably had too much to do that day. And she probably wasn't thinking. She was just thinking what was on her to-do list. So,
yeah,
I I understand.
I think as being a patient, I don't. Well, I think I'm a little bit older than you are, or maybe a lot older, but this picture of the medical community, oh, they know everything and they know what to do and they're going to, and like you, different times during my treatment, I was in one facility where the ratio of patients to staff was a lot of patients to a few caregivers. And
Right.
then later in my journey, I was in a more, um, I guess I would call it more boutique kind of experience, completely different because I
Mhm.
wasn't, I was one, there was probably three patients to each nurse. Whereas when I was getting treatment in the hospital, it was probably 10, 20 people were all relying on one person, and they're doing their best, but they can only do what they can do. And I'm sure, you know
Right.
thank goodness we didn't have this happen to us during the pandemic, because I know there have been people who've had to deal with that too.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that is huge.
Yeah.
How As you started writing the book, what kind did things show up that you weren't expecting to, you know that you didn't remember, or that caused you to feel things that you weren't quite prepared for?
So I remembered everything that's in the book. I
So
had my husband confirm them, and we weren't always on the same page with what really happened.
that's real
But
life. Yeah.
yeah, but the things that I wrote about actually I remembered.
Okay.
I did have trouble with my feelings. So I wrote the book,
Mm-hmm.
read it. I went, this is terrible. Nobody's going to read this. It didn't have any emotion, like none.
Oh, so
So I put it down,
yeah.
came back 6 months later and rewrote it and read it again. I went,
Mhm.
this is pretty good, but there is no emotion when I talk about my family. It's like, okay,
Oh,
I have to get real here. So my family is not all that demonstrative.
mm-hmm.
I am sure they love me. I love them. But saying it, that is really hard.
Oh,
But I finally did. The third time through, I edited again.
yeah.
And then I said, this is it. I sent it to someone for editing.
Mm-hmm.
And she did a really good job. So the first chapter is what I wrote the first, well, I started the book on my 1 year anniversary.
Really?
And the first chapter was the one that she had the most edits in.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have a lot of edits throughout the book, but she really got the first chapter. I'm going, oh. But I thought about what she said,
Yeah.
and I realized, oh, and then I sent it out to a few friends just
Yes.
to see.
Yeah.
And they said, she's right. The first chapter is terrible. Go with what she's done. It's like, okay.
How did she influence you? What did she recommend that you do to improve that?
Um, she mostly took sections out,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
right?
So
And
tighten.
to tighten it up. Now,
Okay.
I will say that there were a few sections I said, no, that's got to be in. Sorry.
Yeah.
But um, she was right. It needed to be tighter.
Well, let me ask this. Who would you say you wrote the book for? I know you wrote it for yourself, but who else did you write that book for?
So I wrote it for stroke survivors, brain injury survivors, and caregivers. And it's about my story, right?
Hmm.
But my husband is a caregiver. He wrote some. My sister wrote some.
Uh-huh.
A couple friends wrote some. My doctors, three of them wrote something.
Awesome.
So it shows you what a stroke is like from different perspectives. I think that's really important.
I think you're right. Because the experience of the patient is different than someone who's helping you because they don't know what it feels like to be inside it. And at the same time, we as patients we have to rely on some other people to help us. um, but I think you said it at the very beginning, your mindset, and very literally your mindset about am I going to recover, has the biggest impact on whether or not your body can heal itself.
Mhm.
And you've definitely proven it because if I didn't know you'd had a stroke, I wouldn't know that you had a stroke. And
Yeah.
it's it's inspiring, definitely inspiring. Have you what plans do you have with the book? Are you looking to share this with um, other stroke patients? With where where are you where are you putting the book out in the world so that it can do its best work?
So it's on Amazon.com
Mm-hmm.
and anyone can buy it there.
Yeah.
I guess so it took me 4.5 years to write and publish the book, right? And I put it out there and I thought, I'm done. You know, I'm
Yeah,
not done.
no. I've heard that one. Yes.
So, really. So I started doing podcasts
I know.
like this.
As a marketing person, you're going, yeah, no, you're not done yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started doing podcasts just to let people know it's available.
Yeah.
And excuse me, a cat may come up. So if you
It's
see
not
one,
a kitty. That's perfectly okay. I like kitties.
so I realized that I have more to offer than the book. So I took a coaching class
Oh,
and I became certified in health and life coaching,
really?
really.
Wow.
Because although every stroke is different, there's enough of the things that are the same for me to coach.
Well, I'm in awe of you.
On April 9th and 10th,
Yeah.
I am going to be trained on how to use the microcurrent neurofeedback machine from the guy who invented it.
Oh my gosh.
And I am going to work under the doctor who treated me.
Yeah.
So I can coach people and I can give neurofeedback to those who want it.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's tremendous.
So I think this is what I was meant to do. It took me a long time to get here.
People didn't used to live this long, so we have multiple things in our lives, most of us have multiple careers. I
Right.
think that's tremendous because
Yeah.
you have you have wisdom that other people would not have.
Yeah.
And you can be you can be encouraging, but you also know the reality of, when your body isn't functioning the way that it's supposed to. It did you find that it really threatened your identity when you first were ill, that suddenly, am I me? Am I still me?
I I thought I was me until about year 3. And then the 5K was coming up and I'm going, and I wasn't running yet because I dislocated my elbow.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it, I thought, I have gotten so much different from the person that I used to be. And now it's been long enough I can admit it. So for the first 2 years, 2.5 years, just I couldn't wait to get back to the normal me. Well, yeah, she's gone. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I think that as long as you like yourself and you do things that make yourself valuable,
Yeah.
that's all that matters.
You've done that, in that you've got something that people can read, and now you're taking the next step where you're
Hmm.
actually going to be facilitating people getting well.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
I applaud you for that. I think
yeah,
that's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
yeah.
So you obviously had a good relationship with your doctor, and that I think that makes a difference too. And I think not everybody understands that. Just because someone is a doctor doesn't necessarily mean they have all the answers, and it's okay to keep searching if you don't get what you need.
So I found him in November of 2014, and I found him because he gives acupuncture. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And then he suggested that I get my blood tested to see if I had any allergies. Okay, I had 50. I would say allergy is a little strong,
Yeah.
but I'm slightly allergic to or moderately distasteful to 50 things.
Wow.
And here's the interesting thing. So I had been to an allergist 3 times before over the
Mm-hmm.
last 20 years,
Yeah.
and they'd given me skin tests,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't show anything.
Mm-hmm.
He took a blood test, and he realized that there were 50 things that I just didn't really like or didn't like me. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
like me, that was it.
Yeah.
And I said, 50? I don't believe you. He said,
Did he muscle test you immediately?
no, he said, go home and eat everything that's on here and nothing more. Or I went, okay. So it took me a long time to get through the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
My sinuses, I stuffed up every night for 20 years. I can breathe like all the time now.
Uh-huh.
Morning, nighttime, it doesn't matter. I can breathe.
Oh my gosh.
So what he did is he took away the inflammation
Mm-hmm.
by getting me to eat right.
Yep.
And here's the interesting thing. So I was told by the neurologist that my carotid artery would always be closed. On the 1 year anniversary, I went back. It wasn't closed anymore.
Because now you were taking care of the nutrition and your body could repair. Yep. Yes. Okay. That I get it. I get it. I work with an acupressurist on a regular basis and have for the last 20 years, and without her support during my illness, I would have been a lot sicker. She helped me prepare before surgery. She helped me get rid of the anesthesia after surgery. She I mean, she doesn't call herself a medical intuitive, but she's very tuned in.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's things that we like to go on the path of there's good things in Western medicine, there are good things in Eastern medicine. They aren't mutually exclusive, but sometimes this path's better, sometimes this path is better.
Yep.
And you sound like you're open to exploring all the different possibilities to help you get to where you need to go. You've told us some interesting things about yourself, and you've told us some interesting things about the book. Are there? I'm just curious. Since you mentioned the fact that neither you or your husband had any clue what might happen if you had a stroke. Are there people, if you could encourage people to read your book before they have an issue, who would be the best people to take advantage of this information? So, you said head injury and stroke and
Caregivers. Yeah.
caregivers. Yeah.
Well, so I'd like to say everything, everybody, but that's
Oh,
so one in 4 people are going to have a stroke. So you probably are going to know somebody that has one at some point. Think about that.
1 in 4. Well, I know my mother-in-law and father-in-law both had a lot of small strokes.
Right,
They had the
right.
micro ones. But wow, 1 in 4 people. That's
Yep,
a huge number.
yep. And they're thinking that more younger people are having them nowadays than used to have them. So 75% of people 65 or older have the stroke, but people can have a stroke in utero,
I know one person who did.
right?
Who, yeah,
So you see, you know somebody.
I do. I do.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's remarkable. That is remarkable. Marcia, how can people get in touch with you if they want to know more about, so we know they can go to Amazon to buy your book, and I will include the link in our notes. But how might they get in touch with you personally if they wanted to know more about what you're doing or, your advocacy?
Right. So it's Marcia at strokeforward.com. That's Marcia at strokeforward.com.
I mean, I've learned a lot, and
Yep.
you've inspired me because I've been poking around on my memoir since 20 whatever, I think 2017. And yeah, it's interesting what comes up when you start writing this information, but it's not just a memoir. It is
No.
really, here's information that people can use, and when you're in this situation, what do you do next? It's,
Right.
it's tricky. It is really tricky. Well, I so appreciate you being on Author Spotlight, and those statistics are startling. So we know people need the information. We know we need to know more than we know now. And, we all are connected in families, or we have friends. So this is a great opportunity, and you are a wonderful model for, hey, there is coming out the other side.
Yeah.
And
It might take a while.
yeah, it might take a while, and you learn some new skills along the way, which is also just very inspiring. So thank you so much, and I'm going to sign off now. This is Judy Baker, book marketing mentor, and if you've written a nonfiction book, I hope you'll consider being an author in the spotlight.